Ash sat quietly in his modest apartment, the hum of the city outside barely penetrating his thoughts. The knock on the door was soft, almost hesitant, but it sliced through the silence like a sharp blade. He opened the door to find a cloaked figure, their face obscured by the shadows of their hood. "Are you Ash?" the figure asked, their voice a mere whisper. "Yes, that's me," Ash replied, his brow furrowing in confusion. The figure extended a gnarled hand, offering an envelope sealed with black wax, emblazoned with a symbol that sent a shiver down Ash's spine, a skull entwined with serpents. It was a symbol he'd seen in nightmares, one that belonged to a world he had desperately tried to forget. "This is for you," the figure said before disappearing into the night as silently as they had arrived. Ash tore open the envelope, his hands trembling. The letter inside was brief, but its message was earth-shattering. His father, a man whose very name evoked fear and revulsion in the world of the arcane, had passed away. The notorious Necromancer, known for his ruthless pursuit of forbidden knowledge, had left everything to Ash, his estranged son. The news was a shock, but not a surprise. Ash had spent his life distancing himself from his father's dark legacy. Now, it seemed, that legacy had come to claim him. With a heavy heart, he made his way to his father's abode, a place he hadn't set foot in for years. The house stood like a relic of a bygone era, its walls overgrown with ivy, the air around it thick with a sense of foreboding. As Ash pushed open the heavy oak door, a musty smell greeted him, the smell of old books and secrets long buried. The study was exactly as he remembered, a chaotic collection of artifacts and tomes, relics of a life devoted to necromancy. Shelves lined with ancient books towered over him, their pages filled with arcane knowledge. On the desk lay an array of objects, a crystal orb clouded with shadows, a dagger with a hilt shaped like a bone, and a necklace with a pendant shaped like a raven's skull. Each object seemed to pulse with a dark energy, a stark reminder of the power his father had wielded. Ash's gaze fell upon a large, leather-bound book lying open on the desk. The words on the page shimmered with a ghostly light, beckoning him closer. He knew that accepting this inheritance meant walking a path fraught with danger and darkness, a path he had long sought to avoid. But the weight of his father's legacy was now his to bear. With a sense of inevitability, Ash reached out and touched the book, feeling a surge of energy course through him. In that moment, Ash accepted his inheritance, the legacy of the Necromancer. The journey ahead would be perilous, but there was no turning back. The secrets of the undead, the curses, and the dark magic that had been his father's life's work were now his. And with them, a destiny he could no longer escape. The chill of the evening air was a stark contrast to the warmth of the study Ash had just left. He was still grappling with the reality of his inheritance when a sudden gust of wind whipped around him, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. Ash turned sharply, sensing an ominous presence. Standing before him was a figure shrouded in a cloak as dark as the night sky. Her eyes, piercing and cold, seemed to bore into his very soul. This was Raven, a name whispered with a mixture of fear and respect in the circles of necromancy. "Ah, the prodigal son returns," Raven's voice was laced with sarcasm and malice. "But you are not your father, are you, Ash?" Her words stung, carrying an undeniable truth. Ash, though the son of a powerful necromancer, had spent his life avoiding the dark arts. He stood there, feeling vulnerable and out of depth. "Your father's death leaves a void," Raven continued, her eyes glinting in the moonlight. "A void I intend to fill. His territory, his secrets, his power, they will be mine." Ash felt a surge of defiance. He may not have wanted this legacy, but he couldn't let his father's dangerous artifacts and knowledge fall into the wrong hands. Raven, sensing his resolve, smiled cruelly. "You're in over your head, boy," she taunted. "You can't hope to control what your father left behind, but I can and I will." With those words, Raven vanished into the night, leaving a trail of cold laughter behind. Ash stood alone, the weight of her threat hanging heavy in the air. It was clear that Raven would stop at nothing to claim what she believed was rightfully hers. Ash knew he had to act. Unfamiliar with the world of necromancy, he was at a distinct disadvantage. But he also knew he couldn't let his father's dark legacy fall into Raven's ruthless hands. The rivalry had begun, and Ash had to rise to the challenge, whatever it took. Back in the study, Ash's fingers traced over the relics and books left behind by his father. Each object seemed to whisper secrets of a dark and forbidden world. As he moved through the room, his hand brushed against a seemingly innocuous bookend. It clicked, echoing ominously through the silence. Ash froze, feeling a rush of cold air envelop him. A shiver ran down his spine, unlike anything he had ever felt. It was as if the shadows in the room were reaching out, touching his very soul. He stumbled backward, a sense of dread settling in his heart. Whatever he had just activated, it was something ancient, something malevolent. That night, as Ash looked in the bathroom mirror, he was startled by the face staring back at him. His skin was paler than usual, almost translucent, and the veins underneath appeared darker, more pronounced. His eyes, once a vibrant green, seemed dimmed, as if a shadow had passed over them. He leaned closer, his breath fogging the mirror. There was no denying it. He was changing. Panic gripped him. He remembered tales his father used to mutter about curses and the undead. Ash had always dismissed them as mere stories, but now, faced with his own reflection, he couldn't deny the reality. He was turning into something not quite alive, a chilling embodiment of the necromantic arts he had always shunned. The realization hit Ash like a physical blow. He was under a curse, one of his father's making, no doubt. It was a curse that was slowly stripping away his humanity, turning him into an undead creature. Ash felt a surge of desperation. He needed to find a way to reverse this, to save himself from a fate worse than death. In that moment, Ash knew he couldn't avoid his inheritance any longer. To save himself, he had to delve deeper into the dark arts than he ever imagined. The curse had awakened, and with it, a new chapter in Ash's life began. One filled with dark magic, ancient curses, and the stark reality of his father's legacy. In the days following the awakening of the curse, Ash's world became one of shadows and whispers. One evening, as he was sifting through the myriad of his father's papers, a piece of parchment slipped from between the pages of a grimoire. It was an anonymous note, crudely written, but its message was clear and chilling. The Order of the Light seeks to cleanse the world of your darkness. You are their next target. Ash's heart raced. The Order of the Light, a secret society legendary for its ruthless pursuit of those who dabbled in the dark arts, was now after him. He was no practitioner of necromancy, but he realized that in the eyes of the Order, his lineage alone made him guilty. That night, as he walked through the deserted streets, the sense of being watched grew overwhelming. Shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. Suddenly, cloaked figures emerged from the darkness, their movements swift and silent. Ash's pulse quickened. He was woefully unprepared for a confrontation like this. The members of the Order were relentless. They cornered him in an alley, their weapons glinting in the moonlight. Ash, realizing brute force was not an option, relied on his quick thinking. He threw a smoke bomb he had found in his father's study, engulfing the alley in a thick cloud. In the confusion, he scaled a wall, his heart pounding in his chest. From the rooftops, Ash watched as the figures searched for him below. He was barely breathing, his mind racing. This was no longer just about mastering his father's dark legacy. It was about survival. The Order of the Light wouldn't stop until they had him, and he had to be ready. As he made his escape across the rooftops, Ash understood the gravity of his situation. Not only did he have to contend with rival necromancers and a curse turning him undead, but now he was being hunted, by a secret society dedicated to his destruction. The path ahead was fraught with danger, and Ash knew he had to tread carefully. The knight's narrow escape was a stark reminder of the peril he was in. The realization that he was now hunted by the Order of the Light spurred Ash into action. Desperate to find a cure for his curse and protect himself, he remembered an old legend his father had once mentioned, about a powerful artifact hidden in the depths of the underworld, capable of reversing even the most potent curses. Determined, Ash scoured his father's study for any information about this artifact. Buried under stacks of dusty scrolls and ancient tomes, he found a map, its edges worn and its lines faint. The map detailed a treacherous path to the underworld, a place of eternal darkness and despair, where lost souls wandered aimlessly. With no other options, Ash set out on his journey. He traveled through forgotten lands and desolate wastes, following the map's cryptic directions. Finally, he arrived at the entrance to the underworld, a gaping maw in the earth from which cold, whispering winds emerged. Taking a deep breath, Ash descended. The path was steep and treacherous, winding down into the abyss. As he went deeper, the air grew thick with a sense of sorrow and loss. The wails of the lost souls grew louder, their cries echoing off the cavernous walls, creating a chorus of despair. Finally, Ash stepped into the underworld. It was a realm unlike any he had ever seen, a vast expanse of shadow and mist, where ghostly figures roamed aimlessly. The air was heavy with the weight of unfulfilled desires and broken dreams. This was a place where hope seemed to die, suffocated by the overwhelming presence of despair. Despite the oppressive atmosphere, Ash pressed on. The artifact, once wielded by his father, was somewhere in this realm, and it was his only chance at salvation. With each step, he felt the eyes of the lost souls upon him, their gazes filled with a mixture of envy and pity. Ash had entered the underworld, a place of no return for many. But he was determined to find the artifact and escape, not just with his life, but with a chance to free himself from the curse that bound him to a fate worse than death. In the heart of the underworld, surrounded by the lost and the damned, Ash encountered a wandering undead. This creature, once a person now reduced to a hollow shell, roamed aimlessly through the mist. Recalling his father's tomes, Ash knew that controlling the undead could provide him protection and guidance in this forsaken realm. He cautiously approached the creature, uttering incantations he had hastily learned from his father's books. The words felt foreign on his tongue, a language of the dead spoken by the living. As he spoke, the undead's movements ceased. Its head slowly turned towards him, its eyes hollow yet filled with an unsettling awareness. For a moment, Ash believed he had succeeded, but the creature suddenly let out a guttural moan, a sound that seemed to pierce the very air of the underworld. It was not a sound of submission, but of defiance. Suddenly, more undead emerged from the shadows, drawn by the commotion. They encircled Ash, their movements jerky and unpredictable. Ash realized his control was an illusion. These creatures were bound by a different force, one far stronger than his fledgling powers. The undead began to close in, their moans growing louder, forming a chorus of the damned. Ash's heart raced as he searched for an escape. He threw more spells, hoping to ward them off, but the words were powerless here in the underworld, the domain of the dead. Cornered by the relentless undead, Ash braced for the worst. He was out of options, his back against the cold, unforgiving stone of the underworld. Just as the creatures converged, a blinding light erupted in the cavern, illuminating the darkness with its brilliance. A cloaked figure emerged from the light, moving with a grace and power that was otherworldly. With a wave of their hand, they unleashed a surge of magic that swept through the horde like a tempest, scattering the undead in its wake. The creatures retreated into the shadows, their moans fading into the distance. Ash, still in shock, watched as the figure approached him. The cloak fluttered around them like a shroud of shadows, masking their features. When they spoke, their voice was both gentle and commanding. "Ash, son of the Necromancer," they said, "I am the Protector. Your father, before his demise, foresaw the dangers you would face. He bound me with a promise to safeguard you at all costs." The Protector lowered their hood, revealing a face that was ageless and serene. Their eyes, deep and knowing, seemed to look right through Ash. "I have been watching over you since your journey began," the Protector continued. "The path you walk is perilous, and there are forces at play that seek to thwart your every move. But know this, I am here to guide and protect you." Ash was overwhelmed. The revelation that his father had arranged for his protection was unexpected. He had spent so much of his life distancing himself from his father's world, and now he found himself relying on it for his survival. "Why would my father do this?" Ash asked, his voice tinged with confusion and bitterness. "Your father's ways were mysterious, often driven by motives known only to him," the Protector replied. "But his actions were not always devoid of care. In his own way, he wished to ensure your safety, regardless of the path you chose." Ash nodded, processing the information. The presence of the Protector offered a glimmer of hope, a much-needed ally in a world where Ash felt increasingly out of depth. "Then I am grateful for your protection," Ash said, a newfound resolve in his voice. "But I must continue. I need to find the artifact and break this curse." The Protector nodded. "Then let us journey together. The path ahead is fraught with dangers, but with our combined strength we can overcome them." Together they ventured deeper into the underworld, the Protector leading the way. Ash felt a sense of reassurance, knowing he was no longer alone in his quest. As Ash and the Protector delved deeper into the shadowy realm of the underworld, the challenges they faced grew increasingly perilous. Navigating through treacherous terrain, they encountered hostile entities and traps that tested both Ash's resolve and the Protector's abilities. In one harrowing encounter, they were ambushed by a group of malevolent spirits. The Protector fought valiantly, warding off the spirits with powerful magic, but in the chaos, Ash was separated from his guardian. Alone and vulnerable, he found himself lost in a labyrinthine passage, the air thick with a malevolent presence. It was in this moment of isolation and fear that a demon emerged from the shadows. Its form was shifting and indistinct, a mass of darkness that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its eyes glowed with a sinister red light, and it spoke in a voice that was both enticing and chilling. "Ash, son of the Necromancer," it hissed, its voice echoing off the walls. "You are far from home and your powers are weak, but I can offer you strength beyond your wildest dreams, power enough to break your curse, to conquer your enemies. All I ask for is a small price." Ash, feeling the weight of his situation, listened intently. The demon's offer was tempting. He was outmatched in this world, and the allure of more power was strong. He could feel the curse coursing through his veins, a constant reminder of his impending doom. "What price?" Ash asked cautiously, his voice barely above a whisper. "A part of your essence, a fragment of your soul," the demon replied, its eyes gleaming. "A fair trade for the power I offer." Ash's heart raced. The idea of bargaining with a demon was dangerous, forbidden even in the world of necromancy. But his desperation made the offer alluring. The power the demon promised could be his salvation, the key to his survival and his quest to break the curse. Yet, even as he considered the offer, Ash felt a twinge of doubt. He thought of the Protector, of the promise made by his father, and the legacy he now carried. Was he willing to sacrifice a part of himself for this power? The demon awaited his decision, its presence a dark temptation in the oppressive gloom of the underworld. Ash stood at a crossroads, torn between the desperate need for strength and the ominous consequences of the demon's pact. The temptation was great, but the price, a piece of his very soul, was a cost that could haunt him for the rest of his life. After a tense moment, Ash took a deep breath, the weight of the decision pressing heavily upon him. "Your offer is tempting, demon," he said, his voice echoing in the cavern, "but the price is too high. I cannot and will not sacrifice a part of my soul." The demon's eyes flared with a mix of surprise and anger. "You are a fool," it hissed, "but this choice will be your undoing." With those ominous words, the demon vanished, leaving Ash alone in the echoing silence of the underworld. After resisting the demon's tempting offer, Ash continued his journey through the underworld, troubled by the choices he faced. The Protector, having found him again, guided him through the labyrinthine passages. It was during this journey that they stumbled upon a hidden portal, cleverly disguised within the cavern walls. The Protector hesitated, sensing the dangerous energies emanating from the portal. "This place," they murmured, "it is tainted with a power not meant for this world." Driven by a mix of curiosity and a desperate need to understand his father's legacy, Ash approached the portal. With a deep breath, he stepped through, the Protector following closely behind. They emerged into a realm unlike any other part of the underworld they had encountered. The air was heavy with a dark energy that seemed to pulsate and crackle around them. This hidden realm was a place of experimentation and forbidden magic, a secret laboratory of sorts where the lines between necromancy and darker arts were blurred. The chamber was lined with shelves filled with strange artifacts, vials containing swirling mists and books bound in unsettling materials. In the center stood a large table, cluttered with notes scrawled in a frenzied hand and instruments that were both intricate and menacing. As Ash moved through the room, he began to uncover the horrifying extent of his father's experiments. Jars with preserved creatures floated in murky liquids, their forms twisted and unnatural. Diagrams detailed rituals and spells that delved into realms of magic, forbidden even in necromantic circles. One particular tome caught Ash's attention. It was a journal, the handwriting unmistakably his father's. The entries spoke of a relentless pursuit of power, of crossing boundaries no one else dared, all in the name of mastering death itself. There were notes about the artifact Ash sought, indicating its incredible power but also hinting at a terrible cost. Ash felt a mix of horror and sorrow as he realized the depth of his father's ambition and the darkness of his path. This hidden realm was a testament to a mind consumed by the pursuit of forbidden knowledge, a legacy of horror and power. The Protector stood silently, observing Ash as he absorbed the truth of his inheritance. "Your father's quest for power knew no bounds," they said softly. "But you, Ash, you have the choice to forge a different path." Ash nodded, his resolve hardening. He knew he had to find the artifact and break the curse, but he also understood the importance of not repeating his father's mistakes. As Ash and the Protector ventured further into the depths of the hidden realm, the air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over them. It was in this eerie stillness that Ash encountered a ghostly figure, ethereal and faint, yet unmistakably familiar. It was the spectre of his father. The ghost hovered before him, its form flickering like a candle flame in the wind. Ash's heart skipped a beat, a mixture of fear, anger, and curiosity welling up inside him. He had so many questions, so much left unsaid between them. "Father?" Ash whispered, his voice tinged with disbelief. The ghost's eyes, hollow and deep, met his. "Ash," it spoke, its voice a mere echo of what it once was. "You tread a path fraught with danger, much like I did, but your journey need not mirror mine." Ash's mind raced. Here was his father, the man whose legacy had cast a long, dark shadow over his life, offering counsel from beyond the grave. "Why did you do all this? The experiments, the curse?" Ash asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. The ghost of his father sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of countless regrets. "In my quest for power, I lost sight of the cost. The artifact you seek, it is powerful, but it is also a curse. a burden that consumes all who wield it. Ash listened intently, the words of the ghost resonating within him. How do I break the curse? How do I escape this fate? The answers you seek lie within you, Ash. Look not to the shadows of the past, but to the light of your own spirit. The ghost replied, its form growing more transparent. Beware the temptations of power, for they lead to a road from which there is no return. Before Ash could ask more, the ghost began to fade, its presence diminishing like mist at dawn. Find your own path, my son. Let my mistakes not be yours. With those final words, the ghost of Ash's father disappeared, leaving him in the silent gloom of the hidden realm. Ash stood there, a mix of emotions churning inside him. The encounter had raised more questions than answers, but it had also strengthened his resolve. The cryptic advice and warnings of his father's ghost left Ash more determined to unravel the truth and find his own way. Guided by the cryptic advice of his father's ghost, Ash, along with the Protector, ventured deeper into the underworld. Their journey was perilous, fraught with dangers that tested both their resolve and their strength. The map and notes left by his father led them to a cavern deep within the underworld, a place where the air was thick with malevolence. The cavern was immense, its walls lined with grotesque carvings that seemed to writhe in the dim light. In the center stood an altar, and upon it lay the artifact, a relic imbued with a power that was palpable even from a distance. Its surface was etched with ancient runes, and it pulsed with a dark energy that resonated with Ash's curse. Guarding the artifact were creatures of nightmare, twisted beings that had once been human but were now something else entirely. They moved with a sinister grace, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Ash and the Protector knew that retrieving the artifact would not be easy. Using a combination of magic and stealth, they navigated the cavern, avoiding the attention of the Guardians. Ash recalled every lesson he had learned from his father's books, every spell and incantation, using them with a precision he never knew he possessed. As they reached the altar, the Guardians sensed their presence and attacked. A fierce battle ensued, with Ash and the Protector fighting back-to-back against overwhelming odds. Ash felt the curse within him respond to the artifact's proximity, lending him strength but also urging him to seize the relic. In a daring move, Ash lunged for the artifact, his hand closing around it. A surge of power coursed through him, a torrent of energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Using this newfound strength, he unleashed a wave of magic that repelled the Guardians, giving him and the Protector the chance to escape. With the artifact in his possession, Ash felt a glimmer of hope. The relic, pulsing with dark energy, was both a key to breaking his curse and a reminder of the heavy burden he now carried. The path ahead was still uncertain, and the dangers of the underworld loomed large. But with the artifact in hand, Ash knew he had taken a crucial step towards salvation. As they made their way back through the caverns of the underworld, Ash couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with fear. The artifact he carried was a powerful tool, but it was also a link to a legacy of darkness that he was still struggling to understand. Ash was determined to see it through, to find a way to break the curse and forge his own destiny. As Ash and the Protector made their way back from the depths of the underworld, the air grew tense with an impending sense of doom. Unbeknownst to them, the Order of the Light had been meticulously tracking their movements, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. The assault came swiftly and without warning. Members of the secret society, clad in armor etched with symbols of light and purity, emerged from the shadows. They were well trained and armed, their sole purpose to eradicate the taint of necromancy from the world. Ash and the Protector found themselves surrounded, vastly outnumbered. The members of the Order attacked with a ferocity driven by their fanatical belief. Ash fought bravely, but he knew that their chances of overcoming such a force were slim. In the heat of the battle, Ash remembered the artifact he had secured from the underworld. Clutching it in his hand, he felt its power pulsing, a dark energy waiting to be unleashed. With a mixture of fear and determination, he tapped into the artifact's power, unleashing a wave of dark magic. The effect was immediate and devastating. The members of the Order were thrown back by the force of the magic, their ranks thrown into disarray. The artifact's power was unlike anything Ash had wielded before, a torrent of energy that coursed through him, both empowering and terrifying. Using this newfound strength, Ash turned the tide of the battle. The members of the Order, though brave and determined, were no match for the raw power of the artifact. One by one, they fell back, retreating into the shadows from which they had come. As the dust settled, Ash stood amidst the chaos, the artifact in his hand still pulsing with dark energy. The victory was bittersweet. He had repelled the attack, but the encounter had shown him the relentless nature of the Order of the Light. They would never stop hunting him, never cease in their quest to eradicate necromancy and all associated with it. The Protector looked at Ash, concern etched on their face. "The artifact's power is immense," they said. "But be wary. Such power comes at a cost." In the aftermath of the battle with the Order of the Light, Ash found himself grappling with not only the external threats, but also the internal turmoil stirred by the use of the artifact. Amidst this, he began to question the true nature of the Protector. The Protector's origins, bound in mystery and shadows, suddenly seemed suspect to Ash. He couldn't help but wonder if there was more to their story, motives he was not privy to. These doubts came to a head when they were ambushed by a group of mercenaries, likely hired by the Order of the Light. The mercenaries were ruthless, skilled in combat, and seemed specifically prepared to counter both Ash's and the Protector's abilities. During the fierce confrontation, Ash was cornered, his back against a cliff's edge. The mercenaries, sensing victory, closed in. It was in this moment of dire peril that the true nature of the Protector was revealed. The Protector, who had been fighting off attackers with a ferocious intensity, noticed Ash's perilous situation. With no thought for their own safety, they leapt in front of Ash, taking a barrage of blows that had been meant for him. The impact sent them reeling, but they stood firm, acting as a shield between Ash and the mercenaries. Witnessing this act of selflessness, Ash's doubts evaporated. The Protector's actions spoke louder than any words could. They were not just bound by a promise to his father. Their dedication to Ash's safety was unwavering, their loyalty beyond question. With renewed vigor, Ash fought alongside the Protector, using a combination of his own burgeoning powers and the artifact's might. Together they turned the tide, driving the mercenaries away. As the enemies retreated, Ash turned to the Protector, who was nursing wounds from the altercation. "Why did you do that?" "You could have been killed," Ash asked, a mix of gratitude and concern in his voice. The Protector met his gaze, a faint smile on their lips. "My duty is to protect you, Ash. Your father's command was clear, but beyond that, I have seen your heart. You are not your father. Your path is one of struggle against darkness, both external and internal. That is a path worth safeguarding." As Ash's journey through the underworld neared its end, he and the Protector emerged into a desolate landscape, a place where the veil between the worlds was thin. It was here, in this forsaken place, that Raven chose to make her stand. Raven appeared before them, her presence commanding and malevolent. "I have been watching you, Ash," she sneered, her eyes burning with a mix of hatred and admiration. "You have grown in power, but you are still the inexperienced boy playing with forces beyond his comprehension." Ash felt the weight of Raven's gaze, her words stoking the fires of his determination. He had indeed grown, not just in power, but in understanding the responsibility that came with it. "I am not my father, Raven," he replied, his voice steady, "and I will not allow you to continue his dark legacy." The air crackled with energy as the two necromancers prepared to face off. Raven, skilled and powerful, unleashed a barrage of dark spells. Ash, with the Protector by his side, countered each attack, his control over the dark arts bolstered by the artifact's power. The battle was intense, the two opponents evenly matched. Ash, however, had an edge. The artifact, a source of immense power, responded to his will, giving him the strength to counter Raven's attacks and push her back. Raven, realizing she was losing ground, let out a fury-filled scream and summoned skeletal minions from the ground. Ash, drawing upon his newfound abilities and the artifact's power, shattered the skeletons with waves of dark energy. As the final skeleton crumbled to dust, Ash advanced towards Raven. She was powerful, but the strain of the battle was evident. In a desperate move, Raven conjured a shroud of darkness and vanished into the shadows, her voice echoing a vow of revenge. "You may have won this battle, Ash, but this is far from over. I will return, and when I do, you will regret crossing me." The threat hung in the air long after her presence had faded. Ash stood there, breathing heavily, the remnants of dark magic dissipating around him. He had faced Raven and emerged victorious, but he knew this was not the end. Raven was a formidable opponent, and her thirst for power and revenge would drive her to return stronger than before. The Protector placed a hand on Ash's shoulder. "You have done well, Ash, but be wary. Raven is a creature of ambition and spite. She will not forget this defeat." As Ash continued to grapple with the challenges and revelations of his journey, a disturbing truth began to surface, one that would shake the very foundation of his understanding of his father's legacy. In the aftermath of the confrontation with Raven, Ash started experiencing strange episodes where he would lose time, waking up in places he didn't remember going to. His dreams were haunted by visions of his father, more vivid and intense than mere nightmares. The Protector observed these changes with growing concern, noticing shifts in Ash's behavior and demeanor that were uncharacteristic and alarming. During one such episode, Ash found himself standing in front of a mirror, but the reflection staring back at him was not entirely his own. It was his face, but the eyes held a different, more sinister light, the unmistakable gaze of his father. In that moment, a horrifying realization dawned on Ash. His father's spirit had been inhabiting his body, slowly and insidiously taking control. This revelation explained the strange gaps in his memory and the sudden surges in his necromantic abilities. The Necromancer's legacy was more literal and far more sinister than Ash had ever imagined. His father had found a way to cheat death, not by living on as an undead, but by residing within Ash, his own flesh and blood. Faced with this chilling truth, Ash found himself in an internal battle for control of his own body and mind. His father's spirit was strong, bolstered by a lifetime of dark magic and an unyielding will to survive. Ash, however, was not without his own strengths. His resolve, his growing mastery of necromancy, and the bond with the Protector gave him the fortitude to resist his father's dominance. The struggle was intense and deeply personal. Ash fought not just against the spirit of his father, but also against the legacy of darkness that threatened to consume him. It was a battle of wills, played out in the shadowy recesses of his mind, with the artifact's power as a double-edged sword that could either aid him or hasten his downfall. Through sheer willpower and the guidance of the Protector, Ash managed to assert control, pushing his father's spirit back into the depths of his consciousness. It was a temporary victory, however, and Ash knew that the battle was far from over. His father's spirit lingered, a malevolent presence waiting for a moment of weakness to emerge again. This internal struggle added a new layer to Ash's journey. He was no longer just fighting external threats. He was also battling for his own identity, for the right to live a life free from his father's dark shadow. The path ahead was more daunting than ever, but Ash was determined to confront the darkness, both within and without, as he continued his quest to break the curse and forge his own destiny.